Okay, we're on Gimel Amud Aleph in Sanhedrin, the second line, and the Mishnah, the Gemara starts quoting the Mishnah. Dinim Amanas Machzira and Chulu. The Mishnah had said, the first Mishnah in the Parak, had said that by Dinim Amanas Machzira and Beidin Schus Bein L'chayva. By Dinim Amanas, you go and you turn over the psak. You, even after you made a Gemara din, whether for schus or for chayva, by dinam amanas, you'll start again. If you realize they made a mistake. I'm gonna give a lot. But by dinam nefashas, machzirin l'schus v'machzirin l'chayva, you only go back to pater the guy. If you paskin, Bezdin paskin that is chayv misa, and then someone says, "Oh, we made a mistake," you go back. But let's say Bezdin paskin that he's pater, and then someone said, "No, we made a mistake. Really, he should be chayv misa." You don't go back, and the guy goes free. So, practically Gemara like this. For a minute, I'll ask you a stira. Danas adin. We actually had this about 25 blad ago. Danas adin. If a dayan judged the din, zikas a chayev, and he patered somebody who was chayev. Chayev is a zakai, or he was machayev someone who was pater. Timias atahar. He said something that was tahar. He said is tamei. Tiras atame, and he said that something that was tamei is tahar. Masha asa asa. His psak is a psak.
You don't go back.
You don't go back. Yishalem mibeisai, and he has to pay the person who lost because of his psak. He has to pay himself. Now we said in the Mishnah by dinam amnas machzirin, you do go and change your mind. You do go change the psak. And over here he's saying you don't change the psak, right? So what's going on over here? It's a stira. That's the Gemara's kasha. Rav Yosef like Hasha. Rav Yosef says not shver. Kan b'mumcha, kan b'shein mumcha. One is by a mumcha, and one is by non-mumcha. If what?
Be a judge, be a shaykhah, right?
No, we discussed this earlier. To be certainly, there's different qualifications. There's a bezdin of 23 that could judge dinei nefashos, and we said that has to be miyuchasim, has to be special, and you have to have rishus from the bezdin, from the nasi, and the Sanhedrin has to appoint you. It's a whole process. Then there's people who are memona who could do dinei knasis. Then there's people who can't do dinei knasis but could do dinei mamas. And then there's a musig of bezdin of hadyotis. So the Gemara is saying that this is talking about one case talking about a bezdin of mumcha, and one case talking about someone's not mumcha. Oh, mumcha. What?
I don't know if you can go back.
No, the other way around. That's why I said this is confusing, because there's some counterintuitive stuff in this component. If it's a mumcha could be chayzer, he could change his mind, and the baldin can't say, "Hey, I'm going like your first psak. I like your first psak. Your first psak was good for me." No, a mumcha could go and say, "No, you know what? I made a mistake. Hadrani bi, I'm chayzer. Ashamnu begadnu gazalnu, and I'm going back." Einen mumcha, he can't change his mind because the baldin who's going to lose now because he changed his mind says you're not a mumcha. Who says that you're a new svara? What?
One guy's been messed up now. What?
Yeah, but now the question is, if they were makabelim to be a dayan and he was their dayan, now the baldin could say, "I'm not going to go." Who says that your second svara is better than your first svara? I like your first svara. It came out good for me, so I'm not allowing the din to be chayzer. So the Mishnah that says that you could be chayzer is talking about an eina mumcha, and the Bryce that says you cannot be chayzer. I'm sorry, the Mishnah that's talking about that you could be chayzer is talking about a mumcha, and the Bryce that's talking about you cannot be chayzer is talking about eina mumcha. That's Rav Yosef's text. Fact the Gemara of a mumcha machzirin. By a mumcha, you are chayz machzir. By a mumcha, you say you could change your mind. You could say it's not the psak doesn't change. Vakatani, we learned in my mumcha lebezdin. If someone was a mumcha to bezdin, we had this price earlier also. Pater milshalom, and he made a mistake. He's pater from paying. That means that his psak stands, right? Even though masha asa, what he did is done, but he doesn't have to pay. Right? Because, and the Rashi says, and we had this before also, that the bad mazel of the person was geirim that the dayan should make the mistake. So, Rav Nachman answers, kan sheish gadol himenu b'chachma v'minyan, kan shein gadol himenu b'chachma v'minyan. One is when the case where he could be chayzer is when there's somebody above him in a chacham of minyan, then the Gadol, who's greater, Chachma Minyan means a bigger Talmid Chacham, that's Chachma. Minyan means you have more Talmidim. Because if you have more Talmidim, that's a raya that you're better, you have more, if anything, it's more Siyata D'Shmaya. Because you don't just have Talmidim just plain, it's not Pasha. Right? So that's where you have someone who's greater than him, then he could say, no, change your mind, and then the Baldin will listen, okay, you can change your mind. But when there's no one who's bigger than him in Chachma Minyan, and he wants to change his mind, the Baldin's not going to change, and even though he says I made a mistake, it doesn't change. So therefore we see, even by a mumcha, there's a situation where you can't change, and that's when there's no one who's bigger in Chachma Minyan. Or where there is, then you could change. Okay. Rav Sheshes Amar. This Rav Sheshes has a different teretz. So the Gemara is going to go through a couple of truths now over the next amud or so on this steer that we said. We have a steer from a Mishnah to the Brisa. The Mishnah said, by Dina Mamanas Machzirin, you can be Machzir, you can change your mind both ways, whether to L'chayiv or to Pater. And the Brisa says, Donasadin, Zika Sachayiv, Chayiv Sazaka, Mashasa Asoy, and Ishalmi Pesach. So this is the Kasha. We just said one teretz from Rav Yosef, but the Gemara is going to say a few more terutzim now over the course of the Amud. And the second teretz the Gemara is going to say is Rav Sheshes. Rav Sheshes Amar, Rav Sheshes says this is the teretz. Kan Shatab B'dvar Mishnah, Kan Shatab B'Shigla Das. One case is when you made a mistake in Dvar Mishnah, and something that's been flourish. What?
One judge made this mistake?
It could be a whole Bezdin. Either or, or it could be that there was one dayan. I think we're going to see later that if both Balidinim are makabel, that one dayan can be the dayan, then one dayan is okay to be a dayan, even though you don't have three. Normally you need a minimum of three. Or it could be talking about all three. Or you have to realize also, it could be that you had 2 dayanim, 3 dayanim, one said chayiv, one said pater, one said chayiv, right? But one of the chayiv ones now wants to change the pater, right? So the Rav Sheshes says another teretz that the nafkamina between the Mishnah and the Brisa is one is talking about when you were toyev b'dvar Mishnah, you made a mistake in something that's a mafurisha Mishnah that's plain straight out halacha. So then it's just, if you make a mistake in Dvar Mishnah, it's just like a, what do you call elementary mistake? A rookie error, right? A rookie error means that you didn't even do the entire. It doesn't count. You got to start again. So then you're chayzer. And Kan Shatab Shikol Adas made a mistake in Shikol Adas. The Gemara is going to explain what Shikol Adas is soon. Shikol Adas means that there's a thought process behind it. And when you make a mistake in Shikol Adas, you don't change. And the Gemara is going to explain that soon. Yeah, there's a reasoning. Now, the Gemara is going to explain Rav Sheshes. The Amar Rav Sheshes says, Amar Ravasi, Tab Dvar Mishnah, if you made a mistake in a Dvar Mishnah, chayzer. Tab Shikol Adas, in a chayzer. If you made a mistake in Shikol Adas, you're not chayzer. The Bach changes the gersa over here. He says, Amalei Rav Hamnuna Rav Sheshes, Rav Hamnuna said to Rav Sheshes, Afilu Tab Rav Chiyav Rav Aishya. He asked Rav Sheshes, what if you didn't make a mistake in a Mishnah? You made a mistake in a Brisa. Rav Chiyav and Rav Aishya, they learned the Brisas. So you made a mistake and you messed up and you went against the Mefurish Brisa. Amalei in Rav Sheshes said, yep, that's also called Tab Dvar Mishnah, and that's also going to be Chayzer. So he said, Afilu B'drav Shmuel. What if it's not a Brisa? It's Amiram, Rav and Shmuel. Right, the great Amiram, the earlier generation than Rav Hamnuna and Rav Sheshes, but they're Amiram. He said, Amarlei in. That's also considered Tab Dvar Mishnah. That's also going to be Chayzer. And he said, so Rav Hamnuna said, Afilu b'divididach. What about you and me? So Amarlei. So Rav Sheshes backed him. Atu anan katli kani ba'agva anan. Are we stam people who are harvesting reeds in the agam? We're stam people. We're not stam people. We know how to learn. So even if you make a mistake in
chopped liver.
Yeah, very good, very good. What am I, chopped liver? Right. So he said, even if you make a mistake in something that's a psak from the words of people like Rav Sheshes and Rav Hamnuna themselves, yeah, obviously they're Gedolim, but even though it wasn't the previous generation, that would still be considered Tab Dvar Mishnah. But now the Gemara says, if that's the case, then I have a problem, because we said before that there are two kinds of mistakes, Tab Dvar Mishnah and Tab Shikol Adas. Well, Tab Dvar Mishnah we're saying is, even in Rav Hamnuna and Rav Aishia and Rav Sheshes, this generation, that means they're humbling the Svaras, right? They're coming up with the Chiddushim, right? And it's considered a mistake. In that case, what's the Shaila? What's the mistake? Yes, then what's the B'shikol Adas? What's the Svara mistake? So the Gemara says this is the Svara mistake. What's the case of Shikol Adas that they made a mistake and that is not Chayzar? And Rav Papa says, you have two Tanam or two Amaram. They're Pligi Adadi. They're arguing on each other. And the Beis Medrash, they never said the halacha is like, this Tana or this Amayra, or the halacha is like this Tana. There's no psak. And he went and he paskined like one. He said in the Torah, we should go like the Dayan. We should go like so and so. V'sugi d'shmaitza azli ki'idach. And the sugya of the raid, how most Dayanim paskin goes like the other Mandi Amar. He paskin fakir from where most people are paskin, even though there's no halacha that's a davar bar. The Mishnah Berurah doesn't say it straight out, right? But if you ask a bunch of gedalim, the most of them in that time, the most of them are going to say, "Oh, we paskin like him." Hainu Shikol Adas, that's considered Shikol Adas. Here he has a Shikol Adas, he said, I pass him like the other side.
We're not saying he's wrong.
We're not saying he's wrong, and even if he decides he's wrong, then he cannot be Chayzar. The din stands. Mashasei Asoi, Vishalmi Beisai. He may have to pay the person who he wronged, but he Mashasei. Esvi Rav Hamnuna Rav Sheshes. Rav Hamnuna, who had this whole back and forth with Rav Sheshes, asked the following question to Rav Sheshes. There was a story with a para, a cow, that the uterus, the womb of it was taken out. And then the child was, they brought it to Rav Tarfon, and they said to Rav Tarfon, is this a treifa or not? Rav Tarfon the klavim, and Rav Tarfon fed it to the dogs. In other words, he said it was a treifa. And the Maisa came in front of the Chacham B'Yavne and Yavne V'Tirua, and they said it's mutter. Why? Because Sha'amar Taidis Hareife, Taidis the doctor said, and this is a quote from the Mishnah by the way, Taidis Hareife said, Ein par of a chazeri yitzas from Alexandria Shemitzrayim, they wouldn't let either a cow or a female pig go out from Alexandria in Egypt, Elam Ken Chaytchene Imshla, unless they cut out the womb. Why? So it can't be produced. Because they wanted to keep a monopoly on these very well-bred cows and pigs. Huh? Yeah, they didn't want other people to compete with them.
Country have to definitely.
So Amr Rav Tarfon, when Rav Tarfon heard this, he said, Hocha Chameracha Tarfon. He said to himself, Tarfon, you just lost your donkey because you have to sell your donkey to pay back to the guy whose treif said that the paskin that the cow was a treifa. Amr Rav Akiva said, Pater Ata, you're Pater. He said this to Rav Tarfon, your Pater, should call him Mumchel Rabim, someone who's Mumchel Rabim, or the Bach says Mumchel Bezdin, Pater Melasham, is Pater from paying. Now, that's
professional liability, right?
You're Pater. You don't have to pay.
We never see that guy has to pay back.
We do. We just said before. We said right at the top of the Amud.
Right. So why is he paying back?
What?
Why does he have to pay back now?
So, Frakti Gemara, this is Rav Sheshes' Kashan. I'm sorry, Rav Hamnuna's Kashan Rav Sheshes. The Isa, and if it's true what you said, Rav Sheshes, that by Tabadvar Mishnah you have to be Chayzer and you don't have to pay. Lemalei Tabadvar Mishnah. Let's say you're Tabadvar Mishnah, the Tabadvar Mishnah Chayzer, and Tabadvar Mishnah is Chayzer. So Rav Tarfon could just say, oh, you know what? I'm sorry, I messed up. It's really kosher. Right? Huh? If you say what we said before in the Mishnah, Zikas Achayim, Chayim Sazakai, Timas Atar, Tiras Atamai, Nasha Asa Asoi, it's done. He can't be Chayzer. But here, if he's Taibid Var Mishnah, Rav Sheshes says by Taibid Var Mishnah, you could be Chayzer. In fact, Rav Sheshes says that's shot an hour Mishnah. And in such a case, he won't have to pay. He'll just change the psak. He'll say, let's say it's the Dinamam in this case.
That was already given away. That was done.
Oh, that Gemara's going to ask.
Pay back the value.
The Gemara's going to ask that question in a second. Okay, but Pashtus, the Gemara, the Rav Tarfon said, you know what? I'm chayzer. It's not treif after all, and you have to realize when the Gemara says before tiras hatamei, Chayim says tiras hatar tiras hatamei mashas asli, it means that thing is tamei now. You can't untummy it. You can't make it tahor. Right? Yeah. You can't. It's stuck. It's no good. So that's what Rav Tarfon was saying.
That saves him not paying back the cow that he told him to give away.
Now he has to pay it back because his psak is a psak.
Why does he have to pay for it? He did a psak right. Why does he have to pay? He passed him right. There's a trade for it.
If you could be chayzer,
can't be chayzer. Already given away. Finished.
That's a different question. That's a side. Let's say it wasn't given away. Let's say it wasn't given to the dogs, right? Right. So if you could be chayzer, you just go call the guy up and say, "Hey, Yankel, by the way, I messed up. It's really kosher. Enjoy your cow, right?" And he'll be very happy, right? But he can't do that. How do you know he can't do that? Because the first reaction he said was, "I'm Rav Tarfon, I lost my what do you call it?" Right? And Rabbi Kiva says, "No, don't worry, Taco, you can't be chayzer, but you're still going to be pater because Bum Chalarabim does not have to pay. So even though you messed up, it's still okay. And even though you can't change the psak, it's still okay." But according to Rav Sheshes, it's a Toyev Dvar Mishnah because this is a Mishnah. Why can't he be chayzer? That's Rav Nuna's question to Rav Sheshes. Gemara says, "V'isa," and Rav Sheshes is correct. If you Rav Sheshes are correct, the Toyev Dvar Mishnah is chayzer. Leimalei Toyev Dvar Mishnah. Let him say you're a Toyev Dvar Mishnah, a Toyev Dvar Mishnah chayzer, and then just call the guy up and on the phone and tell him that the cow is not treif. If the Gemara, no. This is what Rabbi Kiva was saying. Chadavayit Kamar. This is what Rav Akiva was saying. This is exactly what Rabbi Akiva was saying back to Rav Tarfon. Rav Tarfon said, I'm going to have to pay now, right? Because it's not chayzer. So Rabbi Akiva said back, first of all, the Toyev Dvar Mishnah, your Toyev Dvar Mishnah, Toyev Dvar Mishnah chayzer, and anyway you could repaskin because Toyev Dvar Mishnah chayzer. You can call the guy up and say, I made a mistake. It's really kosher. Even if even if it wasn't the type of Dvar Mishnah, even if you taka messed up because you passed in the wrong way based on a machlekes of Tanaim and it wasn't clear which one you passed in like, and you passed in quote unquote the wrong way, and now you realize you made a mistake and you want to pass in like the way most of the people pass in, still mumchal rabbim atar, mumchal bezdin atar, you're a mumchal the rabbim, mumchal rabbim, mumchal bezdin pater malsham. If you're a mumcha, you don't have to pay. So therefore, the Gemara, that's Rav Sheshes' teretz to say this is how this Maisa with Rav Tarfon and Rabbi Akiva is not shver to what I said. The Toyev Dvar Mishnah is chayzer. Amar Rav Nachman Yitzchak Rabba. Rav Nachman Yitzchak said to Rabba, Ma'ika Maisa Rav Hamnun and Rav Sheshes. This is your kasha, Yitzi. What was the kasha of Rav Hamnun asked Rav Sheshes mi para from a para? Para by the cow. He already fed the cow to the dogs. For less of the tihader, you can't reverse anything. You can't be chayzer. There's no reversal to do. It's gone, right? So if the Gemara hachi kamer like this is what Rabbi Akiva was telling. This is what Rav Hamnuna was telling Rav Sheshes. If you say that someone who made a mistake with Dvar Mishnah does not go back, does not chayzer from the original psak, and the psak stays, al mokam dina, that means that the din stands. Hainu to come after Rav Tarfon. This is what Rav Tarfon was afraid. I'm going to lose my donkey. The camera like and Rabbi Akiva said back to him, you're a mumcha to Bezdin, and you don't have to pay. That's if you hold ta b'dvar Mishnah is not chayzer, right? And that makes sense. That makes sense. Why you have the dialogue makes sense. But if you say that someone who's tab b'dvar Mishnah chayzer like Rav Sheshes, since if the para was still around, dinach lav dina, the din wouldn't be a din v'loi klum. It's nothing. V'loi klum on this. I'm sorry, and you had done nothing because you didn't feed this to the klavim. The guy fed it to the klavim. The owner.
Rav
Tarfon didn't go and put.
He was telling him to do it.
He was telling him it's a treifa, right?
What would he do?
So he didn't do an action. He's saying. Hold the thought. We're going to discuss this in more detail soon, right? He didn't do an action. So now also, even though the guy did feed it to the dogs, he fed it to the dogs, right? And since he fed it to the dogs, it wasn't you. You didn't do it, so you're going to be pater. Okay, let's hold that thought, and we're gonna get back to it. Okay. Zak the Marvaiter. Rav Chisda wants to say another teretz to this back and forth. And the teretz is going to speak, it's going to shed some light on this piece that we just said with Rav Hamnun and Rav Sheshes. Rav Chisda Amar, kan shenotol v'nasim biyad, kan shenlo notol v'nasim biyad. The case where he cannot be chayzer, which is the case of the brisa of Masha Asi Vishalmi Beisai, is when he went, the Dayan went, and he physically took the thing from one person and put it into the other person's rishos. He made it happen. Right? He was hands-on is the word, right? In English you'd say he's hands-on. Then he cannot be chayzer. Okay. But if he said, do this, or you're pater, you're chayiv, pashtus, we'll see in a second if that's not so clear, then you could be chayzer still. So, Mara wants to now have to go through all the cases in both our Mishnah and the Brisa to see if this fits with what Rav Chisda is saying. In the case of Chayav Sazakai, what's the example? So that means you have Reuven and Shimon, right? Reuven says, Shimon, you owe me $100, right? Yeah. Shimon says, what are you talking about? I paid you already. I don't owe you anything. So who's saying the truth? Shimon really did pay him back, right? So he's really pater. So what's Chayav Sazakai? He went and he was Chayav Shimon. He went to Shimon. He said, "Give me your wallet." I'm the Dayan, right? And he took out $100 and he gave it to Reuven from Shimon's wallet. Right. So it turned out that it made the psak wrong. He thought Shimon was Chayav, but then he realized he made a mistake. Right? So that's Nasam Biyad. That's Mashasa. So now he's going to have to pay out of his own pocket back to Shimon.
He didn't do enough research to see if he paid back.
Because he messed up the halacha. He messed up
based on what he was told.
Okay, but he messed up. But that's you got to do the right thing, right? But still, that's the point is that since he was nasav biyad, that was a psak that you cannot be chayzer. You're not chayzer from a psak like that. You might have to make it up, but you're not chayzer from that psak. Ella zikas achayev hechim shkachsla. What's the case when you're mazaka the chayev? Let's say in that case, Reuven says to Shimon, "You owe me $100." And Shimon says, "No, I paid you already." And Shimon really, between you and me, did not pay him already. So Shimon's really chayev. So what did the guy do? He didn't take any money from Reuven and give to Shimon. He just said to Shimon, "You're pater. There's no nasav yad. How could he take any money from somebody? There's no money to move over here." He just said, "You're pater. Okay, now we'll go. Both of you go home." So how does it happen? Zika sechayev. If the Gemara damle patrata. He said, "You're pater." He said to Shimon, "You're pater." That's considered an action. In fact, the Gemara he didn't actually move the money. Gemara says, "Kivan the Amar paterata." Since you said, "quote paterata, you're pater," it's like you put that. You took it from. It's like you took the money and put it into his pocket. He can keep it.
So in the case, told the guy to get rid of the cow. Back to our old case.
Yeah. So in that case,
but it's as if he did it anyway.
In that case, no, he said it was treif.
Rabbi said give it away to the dog. The guy didn't know. I'll give it to the dog. So he didn't have to.
No, he told the guy. I'm not positive, by the way, that Rav Chisda and Rav Sheshes are agreeing over here, by the way. But still, conceptually, that's why I was linking the two together. In that case, what he said was, this is a treifa. And really it wasn't a treifa, right? By saying it was a treifa, he was timei satar, right?
So right? They say treifa,
but
go back.
He didn't. The Gemara is going to say, you're going to see in a second, that the Gemara case of timei satar is you actually took the thing, you took this tahar dikachuma that you thought was tamei, and you threw it in with all the rest of the tamei stuff.
And you can't find it.
The Gemara is going to give a similar case. I think I said the case a little wrong, but the Gemara is going to give a similar case. You actually were tamei. That's not the case when you said the parah is treifa. You said the parah is treifa. Yeah, the guy went and and gave it to the dog. So that's why it's not the same strength as before. As you see from this Gemara that there is such a conceptual difference in psak. So the question is, what's patrata? So patrata, the Gemara just said now, is like you're not talvanasam biyad. Now the Gemara is going to have a problem from our Mishnah. Elamas nisin diktani dinim mamnas machzirin ben l'schos ben l'chayva. The Mishnah says by dinim mamnas, your machzir, you do change your mind. You could change the psak, whether it's l'schos or l'chayva. Bishlam l'schos mishkach slad amlei meikar chayvata. The schos that you could change your mind has to be without natal v'nasan biyad, right? So what's the case? Because if it was natal v'nasan biyad, you can't be chayzer. So it must be if you could be chayzer or it's not natal v'nasan biyad. So it's very simple. He said chayevata, you're chayev. He said to Shimon, you're chayev to pay him, but he didn't go into his wallet and take it out and give it to Ruvain. V'loy nasan biyad. He didn't put it in v'loy natal v'loy nasan biyad. So that's why you can be chayzer. But the opposite case, the case of Chiyav, Heichim Shkachsla, what's the case? The case was, we said, was Ruvain says to Shimon, you owe me $100. And Shimon really did not owe him the $100. I'm sorry, really did owe him $100, right? And the Dayan said, Shimon, you're putter, right? And we said that when you say putter, it's like Natal V'nasam B'yad. So the Gemara is asking
what are you doing? Didn't think anything.
Right, but we said pater is like natal v'nasim biyad. So, in fact, the Gemara is asking right now, if you're saying pater ata is like you're natal v'nasim biyad, then how could the Mishnah say you're chayzer by that case? Let's see it inside. Ella l'chayva, the case of l'chayva, when you have a person that originally you said he's pater, and now you're changing his mind and you're saying he's chayev, heichim mishkachsla. What's the case that you could have in the Mishnah that you are allowed to be chayzer? The Amrlei pater. You said to the guy who really is chayev, you said you're pater. And that the Mishnah is saying you could be chayzer. How could you be chayzer? Well, Amrit, we said, given the Amrlei patrata, if you say you're pater, it's just like you took it and gave it from his hand to his hand. If that's the case, how could you be chayzer? So the Gemara has to say a bit of a deichik over here, and the Gemara itself is going to say it's a deichik on our base. The Gemara says chayda katani. It's really only one case in the Mishnah. The Mishnah said this. I want to quote the Mishnah, so we have the words in front of us. The Mishnah said, "Dine mamanas machzirin bein l'schos bein l'chayva." So we think that's two cases: machzirin bein l'schos bein l'chayva. The Gemara is saying no. That's really one case. The Gemara is saying it's Dine mamnas machzirin l'schos shehi chayva, or machzir l'schos even in a case where it'll be a chayva for the other guy. In other words, by Dine mamnas you always have two people, right? Buy a piece of para, a treifa, right? There's only one person involved. Is it mutter or is it aser? Right? It only impacts one person. By Dine mamnas, if Reuven says to Shimon, you owe me $100, and Shimon says, no, I don't, and the guy says to Shimon, you're chayiv to pay, right? Then he says, now Shimon pays, right? Because even though he lost money, even though he wasn't mechoyev, really, but Dayan said, so he pays. And now the Dayan realizes I made a mistake. So he's going to go be chayzer, even though it's a chayiv to Reuven now. He's going to be mizakeh to Shimon.
Reuven gave the money back?
Shimon gave the money back, but he wasn't supposed to. But now it's a chayiv to Reuven, because he's going to take it out of Reuven's hands. So that's what the Mishnah is saying. It's one case. The case of machzir and l'schos, you can be machzir to schos, to pater, to give the money back to Reuven, to Shimon, to give the money to Shimon who was illegally or mistakenly taken from him, which is a chayiv to Reuven, and that you could still do. That's the chiddush in the Mishnah, but it's only one case, and there's no situation in the Mishnah where the guy is saying patrani, because if he said patrani, that would be like natal v'nasam biyad, and that is not chayzer. In fact, the Gemara, if that's the case, the kavasa gabi nefashis machzirin l'schos they machzirin l'chayva. If you're going to say like this, that when it says in the Mishnah, you're machzir l'schos by dinei nefashas, but you're not machzir l'chayva. So now, what's the case? Machzir in l'schos, that is l'schos greitza. When your machzir l'schos means that the guy you said the guy's chayiv, he was machal Shabbos, right? and you said he's chayiv, and you're going to take him out to Misa, right? And then someone says, no, I have a schus. Oh, you're machzir l'schus.
Well, in case you kill somebody.
But ve'im machzir in l'chayva, you're not machzir l'chayva means the schus shehi chayva. It's a schus which is a chayva, because we said by din mamnas, that's what the schus machzir in l'chayva means. We said it's one case. So now when you have two cases in the Mishnah next to each other, they're talking the same scenario, right? Yeah. So now we're saying that by din nefashis, it's not, you're not machzir for a schus, which is a chayva, because you're not going to say it's a real chayva, because by din mamnas we said that's not the case in the Mishnah. There's no real chayva there, because then we had the kasha about patrani. So now it's a schus which is a chayva. What's the case of a chayva? Where's the situation of a chayva by somebody's machal Shabbos? You put him into Bezdin to pater him you put him into Bezdin for Chil Shabbos, and he said he's pater. And then someone had
who's it affecting?
What?
Who's it affecting?
Who's it affecting?
Well, let's say he killed somebody.
So the Gemara,
killed somebody.
So then what?
And then the guy who's a family is saying that he never killed anybody. Vice versa.
So the Gemara is going to say a close teretz to that. Not exactly. The Gemara is going to say close teretz to that. The Gemara says, halakasha, this is not shvar. Chayse the goyal adam. It's the chiyuv of the goyal adam, because it's shver for the goyal adam that the goyal adam wanted to kill the guy, and now we can't do that. So, frankly, the Gemara, we're saying you're not machzer now, right? You're not going to be machzer for the tzniya fascist. That means you're going to kill the guy,
even though it could be wrong.
Even though you can be wrong, that doesn't make any sense. You're not killing the guy just because the goyal adam is going to feel bad. That doesn't make any sense.
Either way, you messed up. You change it either way.
Yeah, but it's more important for us not to kill the innocent guy than for the goyal adam to be happy, right? V'oid my bain. Also, the Mishnah said in the case of Din Mamnas, it said the shpach was like this. This is why I read it out so carefully before. Din Mamnas machzirin bain l'schus, bain l'chayva. When it says bain, it means two separate things. Whether this or whether this. So how could the Mishnah, the Gemara say, according to Rav Chizda, that it's one case? It's not one case, it's two cases. The Gemara says kasha. The Gemara says it's taka shver. The Gemara doesn't have a teretz on these two kashas on Rav Chizda. Ravina says the last teretz they want to say to answer our steer between the Mishnah and the Brisa. The situation is that he wants to say like Rav Chizda. The Mishnah is where there is no natal v'nasan biyad. We said in the case of Zikas Achayev, there's no case of natal v'nasan biyad, because he's just saying you're pater. And we said, well, saying pater is like natal v'nasan biyad, and then we got into all sorts of kashas, right? We had a lot of problems. Ravina has a teretz to explain what's pshat in the Mishnah. The malva had a mashkin. And the dayan said to the malva, you took the malva, and he said the mashkin, in either natal v'nasan biyad, he gave the mashkin, or he didn't, and he just told him, give the mashkin back, and that is not natal v'nasan biyad, and that's a situation where you could be chayzer. So now the Gemara says, based on how we're understanding the Mishnah, we have to say the Brisa, we have to say the other two cases also. Where's the case by Tamei and Tara of natal v'nasan biyad? Because now we sort of resuscitated Rav Chizda's teretz with Ravina's pshat, and now we could say that's takat nafkamina. If natal v'nasan biyad, then you can't be chayzer. But if it's not natal v'nasan biyad, you could be chayzer. So what's the situation by the other case in the Brisa? The Gemara says, Timei Esatar, the case of Timei Esatar, who's Mtamad Tar, is the Agi Be Sheretz. He touched the Sheretz with it. Okay? Because he's taking away any possible suffix you have anymore. You had a suffix about this? I'm so sure this is Tamei, I'm going to touch it to a Sheretz. Right? Tiras Tamei. And the Tiras Tamei situation is She Irvan Ben Peresav. The Dayan went to he took this tummy thing, right? He said it was tahar. And he said, this is so tahar, I'm putting it together with all your other pairs in the same bucket.
Of tahar.
It
could have messed everything else
up. And it messed everything else up. Those are the cases of natal v'nasan biyad by Tamei Tumas and Taris. Okay, that was a little confusing, this Gemara, but the rest of the Amud is smooth sailing. So
my is a dying of a chayav for damages. The paskin's wrong. They can't take it back.
So our Mishnah, our Gemara seems to be coming out
Liability.
that, and you can't pass it from the Gemara without looking at the Shulchan Aruch, but from the Gemara it seems, in the case of Shnasam Biyad, then the case of Nasam Biyad, you cannot be Chayzer, right? And Yishalom Beisai, except if he's a Mumchel Rabim, then he won't have to pay. Right?
Today, if someone goes to the Bezdin and the guy calls
I don't know how it is today, because we don't have Mumchel Rabbins, right? But generally speaking, in today's Bezdins, you don't do, they do a Pshara or a Pshara Parav Ladin. They don't do the actual Din of Shulchan Aruch. And the person who's writing it, the person who's the Bali Din, and most Bali Din make you sign a shtar that basically says whatever Bezdin says goes, even if you have a tiny, even if you made a mistake, no matter what. And it's legally, usually legally binding also in most states, so it's really pretty strong shtar.
I've been through it.
You've been through that, yeah.
and you want to roast.
I bought both times, but I lost the money anyway.
I have heard such situations.
I never paid.
Yeah. I've heard such stories. Okay, the Gemara says weiter. Puts the Mishnah Din in the Fashas Chulu. The first case we were talking about was Dinei Mamanis, that you're machzer both l'schus and l'chayva. Then the Mishnah said for Dinei Nefashis, we just quoted a second ago, you're machzer l'schus, you're not machzer l'chayva. Tan Rabbanan, the Rabbanan learned in the Brisa. Minayin li'etzim bezdin chayiv. How do you know somebody goes out of bezdin and is chayiv? Amar echad, and a person said yesh li lamed alav schus. Minayin shemachzir. I say, how do you know that you go and you're machzirin? Kamalemer naki al tarig. You shouldn't kill somebody who's naki. In other words, if he's clean, you shouldn't kill him, even if the psak was that he should be killed. If he's clean, wait, fan the schus, go and look into it again. Minayin li'etzim bezdin zakai. How do you know somebody went out of bezdin and bezdin passed in his pater? V'amar echad yesh li lamed alav chayv. And somebody said, I have a chayv for him. I have a reason to chayv him. Minayin she'ei machzir naisai. How do you know you don't send him back to bezdin? Tam leimer tzadik al tarag. It says the pasuk is naki v'tzadik al tarag. We're darshaning naki al tarag and tzadik al tarag. The pasuk says tzadik al tarag. Somebody who went through the Din Torah and came out of tzaddik, even though he's not ba'atzim naki, even though he's not clean because he really did the avera, but Bezdin Paskin, the Gemara din that he's tzaddik, that he's righteous, al tarag you don't kill. Amar Rav Simon Berashi says, "V'chilufa lemesis." The opposite halacha is by a mesis. Somebody who convinces someone to do avodah zarah. The ksiv leisachmal v'leischas alav. It says you shouldn't have rachmanis and you shouldn't cover up what mesis did. That means that if they're taking him out, right? They're taking him out to say he's pater, and someone says I have a reason to be mechayiv. You pull him back in. And if you're taking him out to be mechayiv him, and they paid a gemar din that he's chayiv, and someone says, "Wait, I have his chus," you kill him anyway. Yeah. Rav Kana Masni Michiharin Targenu. Rav Kana says this same chalufah lemesis from a different pasuk by Mesis, which says Harag Targenu. It's a double lashon. Really kill him. Right? There's a special preference that by avodah zarah people should realize how severe the avera is. Rav Zera asked the shal from Sheshis. Chayvi gali is mai. The verse on the side says mai. What's the halacha by chayvi galis? If somebody comes into Bezdin that maybe you should go to Galas because he killed someone b'shayeg, right? And now they paskin that he's chayiv. Do you call and now somebody says, I have a reason to be malam tzchas. So he's answered, Asir ritzech ritzech. You learn at the pasuk ritzech ritzech. One pasuk ritzech is by Ari Miklat, and the other pasuk ritzech is by Shegeg when he kills someone b'shegeg. And you see from here that it's like Dina Nefashis, and you do pull him back if someone has a reason to be Mazatam for his chas. Now, what about Chayve Malkius? What about Chayve Malkius? We're saying Shaila. Is that like Dina Nefashis? And the Marhi, so Rav Sheshes answered, Asi Rasha Rasha. You learn the pasuk Rasha Rasha by Malkus. It says Vayim bin Hakos Rasha, and then it says by Ritzicha by Dina Nefashis by Sikul Chayfer Lina Vashreitzeach. So you learn that Gzer Shav also to tell you that just by Malkus also, if they're about to do Malkus, they already did a Gemar Din. When someone says I have a limit schos, you bring them back. Tanya Navihachi, we learned like this also in a Brisa. Chayv Galis Minayin, how do you know Chayv Galis? Asya Rotzeach Retzeach. And Chayv Malkus Minayin, Asya Rasha Rasha. Fine. Now the Mishnah continued. Ve'emach Zir L'chayva. By Dinei Nefashis, you're not Machzir L'chayva. Amar Rabbi Chiya Barabba Rabbi Yochanan. V'hu Shatah B'dar Rashinat Tzdukim Meidin Bay. You're not Machzir L'chayva if the mistake was a mistake that the Tzdukin are not Meidin in it. In other words, Aval Tah B'dvar Tzdukin Meidin Bay, if you made a mistake in something that's so pashut, that's black and white in the pasuk, and even the tzdukin who don't have Torah Shabbal Peh are made in it, Zil Kari Beiravu, that's an elementary mistake, a rookie mistake, that you are chayzer, even l'chayva. What if you made a mistake by noyef and nefes? Two people are being mizana, and you patted them. You said no, they're pater, right? What? For whatever reason, you patted them, right? Now, by a rate sayach, there's all sorts of reasons to say why the guy should be pater, right? Maybe it was self-defense, maybe it was a mistake, maybe this, maybe that. But by his nus, it's pretty obvious. They did something wrong.
They went to the room, you don't know for sure.
Let's say the Eidim saw, they know what happened, right? So you really know what's going on over here. So, and for whatever reason you said they're pater, can you be chayzer now if you realize you made a mistake and they're chayiv?
How can you make a mistake? You saw it happen.
You messed up. You had a reason. You thought maybe you thought they weren't related. Maybe you thought they were, but you made a mistake, right? Do you say that it's like Zilkari Be'Rab or Never Shein Tzdukin Meidin Bay, and you could retract it even though you pater them and it's Dinei Nefashis? Amar Lei, Rabbi Yochanan said back to Rav Sheshes, Adam Moiktach Yakid, while your fire is burning, Zil Kaitz Karach V'Tzali. Go and cut your gourd, your squash, and roast it on the fire. In other words, he was saying, while you're still orangutan in the sugya, right? So pay attention to this, because you heard that I said the halacha that someone who makes a mistake in a davar shatzdukin maiden by your chayzar. Excuse me. And this is something that davar shatzdukin maiden. This is so pashat that if you messed up and you said that somebody is pater, in the case of its nus, you also it's considered davar shatzdukin maiden by, and they're going to go. Yeah, you can be chayzar, even though it's a dinah nefashis. Itmar Nami, Amar Rabami, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. We talk have a member like this, and then Rabbi Yami says the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Ta b'nayef chayzer. If you made a mistake by a nayef, you're chayzer. Ela hechidami ein chayzrin. So what's the case in you don't go back? By if it's mashma, if there's a case of nayef that you are go back, then what's the case that you don't go back? Gemara says. The guy was bayol shlei kedarka. So now you made a mistake in the limud. The pasuk says mishkevei isha, that's marbe bia kedarka and bia shlei kedarka, and you forgot that.
Is
the pasuk says that bia shlei kedarka is halacha of bia, and therefore, but it's not something that tzdukin maiden by. Because the tzdukin don't learn this drasha, and they're not marbe bia shlei kedarka. The tzdukin would say it's not a real bia, you're pater. But the halach is that it is a real bia, and therefore a person is chayiv, and this guy made a mistake and said they're pater. They get away scot-free because since he made the mistake, ein nachzir and I say by dinei nefashis, and this peer is going to go out free. Zak the marvaiter. Then we quote the Mishnah. Dinei mamnas hakol chulu. The dinei mamnas, it says everybody could come and say it's sad, both the schos, both the chayva. The Mishnah said. Dinei mamnas hakom lamdin schos b'chayva. Everyone can be lamd schos and everyone can be lamd chayva. Dinei nefashis, being nefashis hakom lamdin schos. Everyone can be lamd schos. Ve'ena hakom lamd chayva. Not everyone can be lamd chayva. Well, what's going on over here? Mar says hakol by dinei mamnas. It says everyone can be lamed schus. But by dinim nefashis, it says everyone can be lamed schus, but not everyone can be lamed chayva. So now the Gemara is going on the second half of that. By dinim nefashis, everyone can be lamed schus. Frak the Gemara, hakol, everyone can be lamed schus by dinim nefashis. Afilu edim, even the edim themselves. 2 edim came into Bezdin and they said, we saw Reuven kill Shimon. And then they say, it's not part of their edus, but they say, Bezdin, have you considered maybe it was self-defense?
He definitely killed him. Shiloh's wife.
Yeah, maybe it was self-defense. So they want to be Melamed Schus on Reuven. So Gemara says, let's say that the Mishnah Lema Masnisin Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda V'le Rabbanan is Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda not the Rabbanan. What's going on? The Tanya learned in a braysa. Ve'ed echad liyana b'nefesh bein l'schus bein l'chayva. The pasuk says a person cannot say an edus by din and nefashis, whether it's chus or l'chayva. He could say his chus, even the aid himself could say his chus, but he cannot say chayva. So now, you could if you're saying this, then since the Mishnah says everyone could say chus, it must be that the Mishnah is a das yachid of Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, because according to Rabbanan, the Eidim themselves are not allowed to say his chus. Once they said they'll come in to say Eidus, they cannot say his chus for the guy. He can't say anything. Amar Papa, no. You could say the Mishnah is divrei hakol. It's not talking about when it says hakol. It's not meaning to include the Eidim because you're right. The Eidim cannot do it like the Rabbanan. But be'echad min talmidim divrei hakol. It's talking about one of the talmidim because we said earlier that you have rows of talmidim sitting in front of the Bezdin of 23, and each one of those could say something l'schos, but they're not allowed to say something l'chayva. And that brings us to the end of Daf Lamed Gimel. Tomorrow we'll continue with Daf Lamed Daled.